Okay, perfect. Thanks everyone. This is Sean with ProSymmetry. I'll be walking you through the Tempus version 5.2 release preview. So thanks again for joining. I think what you'll see today is, again, we continue to make just huge investments in the product. This will not be a short overview. There's a comprehensive list. In fact, I've removed a number of very small items since those will be covered elsewhere in the release notes and online. But again, we continue to make major investments in the product. And again, I think you'll see that today. So I'll be using slides exclusively today. I know normally when I do these, I'll walk through the product live. Things are still in flux a bit with QC, QA work happening with multiple builds. So what I'm doing is just focusing in on slides, and then there will be a number of updates coming soon. So first off, release timing. 5.2 is scheduled for release essentially the week of the 19th. So release notes should be available next week, and then you should start to see some things from our customer success team, likely early next week, around our 5.2 webinars and the specifics of the release itself. So lots is coming. And just as a joke here, I just had to add this because I've been laughing at it all morning. We're closing in at the end of the year. Hopefully we can put all this craziness behind us soon. The year's not over yet. Of course, here in the US, we celebrate Thanksgiving. So someone told me, we still have potentially like a raging turkey war that could break out. So year's not over yet, but hopefully we're through the COVID stuff soon. Okay, so what I'd like to do first is just talk about some real high level new features, kind of brand new to the product. Of course, there's lots of other stuff that's new, but these are two areas that are brand new that you should be aware of. So number one, 5.2 includes now a global search. So previously you could search in any of the screens. So the PM screen, RM screen, reports, you name it, you could search. Well, something that we wanted to add, and it come up a few times with clients, was how can we globally search? So how do we make sure that your security is captured? And then with a few clicks, find anything, anywhere in the system. So with 5.2 at the very top of the screen, we've introduced this global search function where you can now look across your entire environment. You could add additional filtering. So if you wanted to look for just projects, just resources, just attributes, just reports, you can do that, but this would be a secure global search mechanism. So this will be part of 5.2, which also means, let me back up, this also means that the conventional search is moving. So there'll be some UI updates of where the search is going to move to. In most cases, it'll land directly above the grids in which it's designed to search in. So you'll see that throughout the application. Another huge add, and we'll cover this in great detail, not great detail, but sufficient detail in the future section, is our new reporting analytical engine called our Portfolio Planner. This gives you capabilities to conduct project prioritization, utilize force in and force out capabilities to see the impact of data from both your live system data or a connected what-if model. So you can actually run this. Imagine you're on a multi-monitor type of setup. You can have your what-if on one screen, your portfolio planner on another, and they will communicate with one another live and in real time. So you can use this to dynamically assemble new portfolios, modify or evaluate existing portfolios, and understand what can and cannot be accomplished under constraints. In this case, under the resource constraints that you specify. So we'll walk through this in more detail, but this is a very powerful feature designed to address the needs of a handful of our most sophisticated clients that are using this to plan their product roadmaps, plan their portfolios, again, under resource constraints. And there's a number of other capabilities that we're planning to introduce to this feature set over time. But if you've been looking for that above, below the line type of analysis, the waterline type of analysis, those things are built into this as well. And you'll see more of that as we get to that section. Okay, so those are two new features. The portfolio planner is huge, and we'll come to that in more detail in a moment. Okay, so I've tried to group these into some sensible collection. So the next section we'll browse to would be portfolio, program, project management-like type features. You'll be familiar with many of these. So the first one I'll go to is the Kanban view. So starting in 5.1, we introduced a Kanban style view, Kanban, really a portfolio level Kanban or program level Kanban. Fully dynamic, configurable, customizable, drag and drop, all that stuff. One thing we couldn't do was actually interact with the cards themselves. So starting in 5.2, you can double click, excuse me, on any of the cards to put it into an edit mode. So from this modal window, you'll have the ability to interact with the attributes for that specific project, or then drill down into the project to update, of course, any other sub-entities, whether it's the schedule, the forecast, the milestones, the financials, all of that. All right, so interactive Kanban, editable Kanban as part of version 5.2. Another new view we've added is a Gantt style view. So in the past, we had the grid view, then we added Kanban, now we have the Gantt view. Now the Gantt view, as its name implies, will display a project list to the left and a Gantt style display of those projects to the right. They'll have zoom in, zoom out capabilities. Currently the bar, which if you hover over, will display details of the project, the name, start, end, and some other details. You can zoom in, zoom out, you can search, you can insert columns here, you can sort by those columns. So you can effectively navigate your portfolio, and it, of course, this utilizes security using this Gantt style view. Some folks have a preference for this. Again, others prefer Kanban, others prefer the grid view. It's your choice. You can also access and drill down into any project from here by double clicking, and then you'll see a context menu off to the left where you can access all of the other functions you would have in the grid view or Kanban, like open, clone, snapshot, shift, delete, lock, and of course the snap to function, which is unique to a Gantt style interface. All right, so Gantt style view now available, or is available in version 5.2. Now, going back to your view preference, currently everything's available, right? So if you've got the licensing set up and the user has rights, they're going to see any and all of these views. We've added something in version 5.2, as you can imagine, the depth and breadth of clients we're dealing with, and the preferences we have under general settings introduced a function that allows you to limit which of these views are available. So if you wanted to prevent the use of Kanban, prevent the use of Gantt, only allow the grid, only allow the Gantt, those are all options you can select. You see those called out here under general settings. Okay, so this can all be configured in general settings. Another update in 5.2, when we're copying projects, so when you're cloning a template or cloning an existing project, something we didn't do before was remove any of the actuals. Now, invariably, there will be someone out there that probably says, oh, I want to keep my actual, okay? Well, what we've done with cloning is we've defaulted 2 new settings that clear the actual allocation and clear the actual demand. So if there's actuals, we can clear them out. It'll happen automatically. You see both of those are selected yes by default. You could have turned them on or off if you wish. But again, this would remove actuals when conducting cloning. So you're not having to then drill in and clear those values with an Excel upload or a modification through SPA or through BPA. All right, so clearing actuals on cloning. 2 more updates that I've consolidated into one slide. This is the audit log functionality. So inside of each project, inside of each resource, there is an audit log screen. And that gives you a contextual audit log for that specific object. So if I'm the project manager, I can look at all the audit information for my project or any of the projects that I manage and have rights to do so. The same for resources, as a resource manager or somebody else. Something we didn't have before was advanced filtering. So start end date range filtering, as well as more detailed filtering to look by specific actions and so on. So some of the capabilities we have at the enterprise level, so enterprise-wide audit log, have now been duplicated or replicated under the project audit log and under the resource audit log. Okay, so audit log filtering. Also, to be aware, and this isn't necessarily a feature update, more of something to be aware of, is that because we replaced the top level search with a global search function, we did move the context search for that particular screen closer to or somewhere underneath or near the grid that it's associated to. All right, so the search windows have changed. Documentation will have to update. You may have to update yours, but please be aware that the search window has shifted to be closer to the grid it's searching, and obviously in response to putting the global search on the top ribbon. Okay, so next what I'd like to do is move on to skills management. And the big updates here in 5.2 around skills management relate to visibility of the skills data inside of a host of different screens. So when we're searching or we want to insert those columns to see more details when performing various actions, that has been accomplished now, and that has been part of, or made part of version 5.2. Okay, so the first place we'll go is to build team. Now, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but do notice that the build team interface has been slightly redesigned, cleaned up, refactored. Looks much nicer, much cleaner, a bit more modern. So some updates there. We'll talk about that a bit later. But you'll see in this case, when working with the build team function, we can now search for resources using skills matrix data. And you'll see in this case, what I've done is I've inserted in the filter here, programming C#, and based on the unit of measure, in this case, it's a range, you can choose if it's set to a certain value, if it's null, if it's greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, and so on, any specific value that has been applied globally. Okay, so we can fully search in the build team for skills using skills matrix data. We've also added inside of the build team grid the ability here to insert the skills matrix data itself. So if I wanted to look at my programming skill matrix, I could insert that, as you see here, overlay the heat map information, and now I can, in one screen when building the team, look at resources, their availability, and their skills matrix data. You can also, of course, filter, and you'll see in a moment, also insert additional columns now into build team. Inside of resource replace, so if you're familiar with in single project allocation, there's a function to conduct a resource replacement. There's been a huge update there, and we're going to get to it in a moment. But when you are conducting a replacement, you'll have the ability, again, to search using skills matrix data. Again, I'm using that here to look for someone that has a C# of level 3 or higher, right, equal to 3 or higher, so I can search by skills matrix data. And we've also introduced here as well the ability to insert the actual skills matrix details themselves. So inside of resource replace, I can now insert the skills matrix information. Okay, so again, to be clear, what we've done is made skills matrix searchable through any of the interfaces. You'll see in a moment when we get to the resource request workflow functionality enhancements, the same is the case there. So it'll be a bit repetitive, but inside of resource replace through the resource request workflow, we've added the option to search by the skills matrix data and also to insert the skills matrix information itself. All right, we'll get to that in a moment. So moving on, bulk project allocation and single project allocation screens. So a number of updates coming in 5.2. The first, and this has been requested for quite some time, is in security. What we've done is we've broken out under project access rules or project access entitlements, access to actual allocation, actual demand, planned allocation, planned demand. So you can now separate out users that have access to the actuals versus those that have access to the planned information. So this is now available in 5.2, where you can again break those rights apart. That's been asked for again quite a bit. We've also introduced in single project allocation the grid, much like we can do inside of BPA flat grid, the ability to insert columns. So right now, and I know there's more coming because I already know what the feedback's going to be. We've introduced the ability to insert resource-centric attributes into the single project allocation grid. They are inserted read-only, and they will be, of course, useful in identifying who's part of the team, where have I pulled resources from, what attributes are being utilized, and then there will be more to come with this. Over time, the assignment attributes, of course, will make their way in, and there'll be additional functionality here with regards to sorting and filtering. But in 5.2, inserting columns of the resource entity type read-only will be available. Two modifications to cross-project allocation. So those of you that are drilling into individual assignments or resources to look at cross-project allocation, that's that minor pop-up or report under resources. Two changes there. Number one, we now set the data in this grid to conform to your preference around zeros or dashes. I know my screen capture is still showing zeros. You just have to trust me on some of the screen captures. Of course, whatever you've selected for null values would appear here, whether it's a 0 or a dash. That's how it will render inside of cross-project allocation. And then secondly, something that's been requested from a few different clients has been from CPA, from cross-project allocation, I want the ability to very quickly transition to a specific project. So we have made the cross-project allocation projects, the listings, hyperlinked. So when you click on those, it would launch and take you to that specific project. So now you can more quickly navigate from CPA, from cross-project allocation, out to the projects that are, of course, associated to what you've clicked on. All right, so CPA, cross-project allocation navigation has been updated. All right, now this is a big update. This is another one of the replacement functions. And the screen capture I have on the top is really designed to give you context of what I'm referring to. So, because a lot of folks just are unaware of this feature set, and we may have to improve how we display it. But inside of single project allocation, excuse me, there is a little pop-up, little modal window that appears when you're in edit mode that allows you to replace a resource. So in this case, I've selected, it looks like Claire Peterson, and there's two options. I can access Claire's cross-project allocation or replace Claire on this particular project for that specific assignment or across the entire project. In the past, what it did is it would take you to a screen. So you would drill into a screen from which you could pick other resources. You could search by name or by role, position, title, any of the attributes. But it would basically do a full replacement. So it would say, from the beginning of time in this project, I'm going to remove Claire and put on another resource. It would keep the actuals, but it would essentially take Claire off the entire project, any planned information. And you could do that with multiple resources. The challenge we had, of course, was that it's never that simple. So if I wanted to replace Claire, it might not be for the entirety of the project. It might just be for a month. And then she would then resume her efforts on the project. Or it might be for a longer period, a specific day, a week, a month, maybe just the back end of the project for whatever reason. Maybe she's planning some time away and we've got to make that adjustment just for that particular window of time. So what we've done is we've refactored and adjusted and redesigned that interface. So now when I drill down, and you'll notice in this particular case, in the screen capture below, for payroll system upgrade phase 15, the project, in this case, Carol Castillo, right? What we can do is pick from different resources to assign them and then modify the allocations on a time phase basis by month, week, or by day in an interface that's almost identical, very similar to the resource replace workflow screen. So now I can more granularly choose how to replace Carol. I can choose from a particular date to a particular date. Maybe it's the entirety, or again, it might just be a specific time frame. And I can then choose how to break out the reallocated quantities over one or multiple resources, again, without having to do a global replace inside that project. So much more granular level of editing capability here when performing resource replace. I'm a big fan of this one. Some other capabilities here, this I think we talked about a moment ago, but just to reinforce, inside this resource replace screen, you have access to insert not just the skills matrix data, but also any of your resource attributes. You can sort and filter by these data as well. So just imagine you're doing a replacement here, the amount of insight you can gain, it's pretty awesome. So I'm seeing the remaining availability off to the right with the heat map. I'm filtering for my resources that I'd like. I'm inserting various attributes to see more about them. And then I've also inserted their skills matrix. So I can very granularly identify who has the right skills, roles, and availability to do this particular work. And remember, these capabilities are updated both in single project allocation replace, resource request workflow replace, as well as build team. So you're getting these capabilities in a lot of different areas. It's not just one isolated subset of the product. Another feature add inside of that single project allocation resource replace is if you are using the team functionality of Tempus, you don't have to. It's not enforced unless you ask the product to enforce it. So if you are enforcing it and you've built your team and you're going to now do this resource replace, it's only going to show you who's on the team. And that can be really limiting because when you're trying to do a replacement, person I need, my team is already totally taxed. I have no one to assign. As a result, we've introduced an ability here where when you're performing the replacement, and you'll notice the two different screen captures here illuminate how that button will change. We can look at just our team members, or we can tell the system, show me all resources that I have access to, which would let me look outside of my team across the entire pool, again, enforcing security, and allowing me to choose who's available to do the work. I can then select them, assign them, and the product will automatically add them to the team. All right, so it does all of that for us. Of course, if the resource request workflow is enabled, that's still going to fire, that still has to happen. But again, this lets you peer outside of the team and or at a minimum, minimize the searching and back and forth. So instead of having to go to the team, add the person, find the person, put them on the project, now go back, do the replacement, you get the idea. When I'm doing the replacement itself, I can tell it, let me see everybody, I'll do the replacement, and then it auto adds into the team. All right, so again, lots of simplification here, but giving you a much broader range of access across the entire resource pool. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the build team screen has been redesigned. Instead of showing the team off to the right, you'll notice the section collapsed above will show you the team. Of course, you can add and remove people from here. The option to clone from the other teams is still here up top. So all the same features, and we've added a number of new ones, are all here. We've just kind of changed the layout, updated the look and feel. Again, remember, we can insert resource columns. We can also insert the skills matrix. One slight change is in the past, as you selected resources, you'd have to click an unnecessary option, which is add them to the team. So what we've done is the moment you click on them now, they're automatically inserted into the team. And you still have to save. So if you move back without saving, they wouldn't persist to the team. But removing that, again, saves and shaves off an extra click that really isn't necessary. And again, all part of the redesign for the build team interface. Okay, those of you, and it's probably a large number of you that are heavy users of bulk project allocation or bulk project allocation flat grid, have for some time asked for an option where you could save different views. Those have now been incorporated into version 5.2. So as you use the product, you can now save and persist individually. You can do this. Your various filters, your selections, your BPA modes, the various fields that have been inserted, column widths, things of that nature, all get persisted to the view. Like other views in the product, you can rename them, clone them, lock them, make them your preference. You can delete them. But again, both BPA and BPA flat grid now support a view creation function. Big one. Another, what seems like a pretty basic one or simple, which is actually technically very complicated to do. And the reason we didn't do before actually made perfect sense. If someone was allocated to a project and had allocation, you obviously would persist the assignment. But if I assigned a person and there's no allocation, planned or actual, there's nothing to save, so we wouldn't save it. Well, we've changed that. So for those of you that have been looking to stage resources, excuse me, essentially assign resources without actually assigning them any allocation or demand data, but be able to come back and then later modify the information when you feel more, when you receive more information or it's the right time to do it, you can now accomplish this. So SPA, single project allocation, bulk project allocation, and bulk project allocation flat grid all support this capability to persist zero value assignments. Again, the ability to create an assignment without actually specifying the planned or actual allocation or demand. All right, so pretty big add. You can see in the grid here, I'm currently checked in. So I have the option to check out. I have 3 resources assigned, quote unquote, right? But 0 allocation. And I guess I should have showed you demand approve. I wasn't taking it. But yes, indeed, it does keep the assignments. So you can stage them and come back and then modify those allocations once you have more information. All right, moving on. So I'm going a little bit more quickly. I want to be respectful of your time. I know most of you, it's already after hours, so I'll try to speed it up a bit. Moving on, so resource request workflow. Something, again, that's been asked for quite some time is when I'm evaluating my resource requests from my resource request review screen, I want to be able to view project fields and resource fields. This is now part of version 5.2. So when performing this action, you can now insert as part of your view. You can sort, filter, of course, all these other options available inside of this grid using project attributes and resource attributes. So if you needed to make any type of decision of which request will I treat first, I'm going to look maybe by project priority, maybe project stakeholder, realistically, maybe other dates from the project. So we can insert those different columns here, sort, filter by, group by, to then make better decisions around how these resources being requested will be treated. Am I going to just treat these as they come in, or am I going to handle these in batches and then treat things based on some prioritization that I come up with? So project custom fields, resource custom fields, attributes, excuse me, available for use inside the resource request workflow screen. Again, we've talked about this quite a bit already, but I want to make sure that you have all the information. And again, skills matrix, we can now search inside the resource request workflow screen. So when I've been asked to replace or assign a resource through this workflow, I can now look for resources that have certain skills matrix values. So we can fully utilize skills matrix data as part of the resource request workflow process. Similarly, I can insert both resource custom fields as well as skills matrix data inside that net availability grid when performing the resource replacement or resource request workflow process. So notice in the grid below, I'm seeing a request for Sarah Ellison, 100 hours for 2 months. I see the remaining availability off to the far right. It gets scrunched over, and then of course you could scroll, but there's only 2 months in this case. And then I can insert, in this case, 3 different fields: employee basis, position role, resource department, and of course the skills matrix data. So now we've sort of exponentially increased the amount of information available to managers when making decisions. And imagine if you're using those assignment attributes, if you said, I need Sarah, but the person that I need, let's say it's a generic, you might have additional details saying it has to be someone that's full-time, it has to be someone that's ITAR compliant, it has to be someone that has a background in GDPR, who knows, right? Well, you can now search for all these things and filter for all these things inside the grid below, and also leverage skills matrix data. So massively expanding on what's available for a decision maker here when determining which resource to assign or resources. All right, making good time here. Moving on to reporting. Another one that's been asked for probably 3 years, maybe longer. We have a report list. That's great. We want a report folder. Well, 5.2 incorporates now a folder structure capability. You'll notice we have not removed access to the report list. So in the top right corner of the screen capture, you'll see report access is still there, report list is still there, but now we have a new option for report folder. The system's going to remember which view you were last on. So if you prefer the folder, it's going to bring up the folder each time. If you prefer the list, it's going to take you to the list. So you have that flexibility as an end user. The folder structure is globally available. So as you're building out this folder structure, it's not just for you, it's for all users. So again, you may want to determine who's going to make decisions on what that folder structure looks like. There are security touch points there, so not everyone can manipulate that. And of course, each report has its own security as well. So you can create a hierarchical folder structure. You can drag and drop reports across the folder structure. You can drag and drop the folders themselves to realign them within the section. And again, folders, all right? So the other feature set of when working in with the folders view is we've changed some of the menu layout. Now, if you're in the report list screen, which the legacy interface, that hasn't gone anywhere. In fact, we now have a new tile for the portfolio planner feature. But if you're using the report folder layout, notice here this new icon, and then the ability to create a new folder, and then of course create the variety of different purpose-built reports we have inside of Tempus. So slight change in their navigation when working in the report folder view. All right, there's a number of other smaller updates on reporting. I didn't want to take up much time with them, but things like certain coding, certain layout of numbers, certain formatting options have also been updated, but I won't talk about this today. All right, so moving on to Portfolio Planner. So this is kind of the crescendo of this discussion, and then we'll move on to additional stuff as well. So before I actually get into the Portfolio Planner functionality, I just want to talk at a high level some of the value proposition here, because it does a lot of stuff, and we're going to do things real high level. We will do like a sort of level 400 review of that once it's live, and we'll launch that out and make everyone aware of it. That'll come through our customer success team. But a few really important things to keep in mind. So number one, this feature lets you evaluate existing or new portfolios under your resource constraints. Okay. 2, this will allow you to prioritize projects using scoring, multi-criteria, calculated values, subjective values, and essentially normalize your selection by using filtering, which is essentially what normalizing would do inside of a list. So you can restack your priorities or restack your projects, programs, and so on by way of attributes that are already in the system that have been calculated, or those that have been synchronized from third-party systems. Okay. 3, we can identify what can fit or not fit under resource constraints given your preferences. So as you can imagine, as a resource-driven system, our primary constraint here is the resource side of the equation. As Donna mentioned earlier, resources really are your money, right? Especially in an era where governments print money, you know, with abandon, right? So, but people are a real constraint. So that's our focus. Down the road, and this gets to sort of number 5, there'll be additional options for optimizing under different types of constraints. Okay. Number 4, you can use this as its own decision support analytic, totally on its own, right? So you can kind of use it as its own little what-if engine, or you can use it connected to a Tempus what-if model. You'll see that in a moment. I even have 2 little screen captures here, but the 2 talk to each other. So you can tie this to a model, and as I start making changes here, you'll see your shale chart, mountain chart, sand chart, stack bar, whatever, move around as well. So we can say, all right, we've got an issue on the front end of this portfolio. I can make changes here, see what goes under, exclude projects here. It would exclude them here. So they're talking to each other if you choose to use it in that mode. All right, so it was designed to be, and this is number 5, designed to be super flexible. So this is used not only as a decision support analytic, what if analysis tool set, portfolio builder, prioritization feature set, but longer term, this will tie into more features we're adding, especially as, dare I say, version 5.3, with strategies, with road mapping, those ILP capabilities, linear programming to optimize under certain constraints, machine learning, AI evaluation to tell you things you didn't know before, perhaps, you know, adjusting or modifying what specific skill gets you the most gain earliest across your portfolio. So this is a starting point for a whole host of additional capabilities that are coming on top of what's already in the product, which is pretty fantastic. All right, so working with Portfolio Planner, the option exists under reports, and you'll see 2 different screen captures here, of course, if you're using the list view or the folder view. And as you click on the tile, right, just like any other report, it's going to take you into a report designer. It'll have 2 tabs versus the conventional 3-tab configurator. And unlike other reports where you save the definition and then you move on, with the Portfolio Planner, you're really continually modifying its definition because you're doing things like forcing in, forcing out, changing the ordering, changing time frames, changing color codes, interacting with underlying data that might be stored in a separate model. So setup slightly different, but you'll see there's essentially a basic config with a name, time frame, description, the source model or the source data. Is it live data or a what-if model, right? But most importantly, you might say the other reports already have connectors to live data, or excuse me, to what-if models. That's true, but there's not a live synchronization in real time. So what happens is you can run those reports off of model data, but I can't see updates live inside of my report as they're happening. That's another really unique feature of this Portfolio Planner setup. Lots of other options, of course, hours, FTE, timeframes, and then we can incorporate a variety of data series. This is going to feel much like RAR2 type reports, where we can choose from a variety of data sets, the plan, the actual allocation demand. We can aggregate by projects or in total, and then we can choose if we wish to stack by different attributes. And you'll see that in a moment. There's filtering and various layout options as well. Now, once you've assembled this, move down here, you're going to get a view just like this, and it's all very dynamic. So on the onset, you say, well, it looks very much like RAR2, right? Well, that's true, but number 1, all these panels can be moved around. 2, you'll notice again our supply demand info. 3, you'll notice a time slicer down below. So the time slicer, if I wanted to maybe drill into just these 3 or 4 months where I have major issues, I can drag this time slicer back and focus on just that narrow subset to then maybe start altering things in my model to maybe move this particular project, which looks like focus group product implementation, and maybe move that out 3 months, and that would then fit under my supply line. Okay. You'll also see color coding and search. You can look at the data as well in a tabular fashion, which I totally forgot to insert here. You can modify the colors inside this, which are persisted, and you can see the numbering, where the lowest number takes up the first resources. So this is our position in the line when we ultimately get up to the point of breaching or go beyond. All right, so very dynamic. Off to the left, you'll see other options like accessing the model, or excuse me, the Portfolio Planner's configuration. And this little option here that shows me a pop-out window where I can reprioritize the project and also access an analytic or an algorithm that will identify which projects fit, which projects don't fit. Okay, so moving on to this next screen, in addition to doing this at the project level, we can also do this at a product level, a portfolio level, a program level, using any of the attributes you have in the system. So previously, we were looking at it by individual project. You'll see in this case, we're looking at it by either areas of the business, client, whatever this is in my system. And you'll see the stack becomes markedly different. And you'll see the number of options here become markedly different as well. So this would let you make decisions at this level. And off on the left is an example of that pop-out menu that lets us do the force in, force out, and also change the ordering. All right, so this can be done literally by product line. If you're doing some Agile stuff, you can tinker with that. And of course, conventional groupings of programs and portfolios and clients and regions and any other attributes you have. So we can do this at a very granular project level or roll it up and do it by any of the attributes used in your system. We can apply color coding. This comes up a lot with RAR2. It's available here inside of Portfolio Planner. You can click on any of the projects that are incorporated, choose the color coding you wish to use. And we've added some things here that are very stark. So if you wanted to call out a specific project and code it as white, gray, black, any of these colors, freely up to you. And they are persistent. So you don't have to worry about colors shuffling around as you start to make changes. You can very clearly hone in on, well, I want to set, these three as these specific colors, and you'd see them float through the shale levels, the sand levels, stack bar levels, however you prefer. So color coding is retained. All right. Now here's this pop-out window, and this gives us a host of additional capabilities. Number one, you can see here there is a force in, force out capability. And this does tie back if you are connected to a model. So it would give you the ability to force a project out and exclude it from the connected model. So there is that additional interactivity. There's also options here to drag and drop. You can see the positioning here of 1 through, in this case, I'm showing 19. And I can insert additional columns here to make decisions or to perform sorting. So we don't need an elaborate set of screens to do this. If you are capturing various criteria, which are then used as a calculated multi-criteria calculated score, I can just insert that score into this grid like I've done here. You'll see project score, project priority as two examples. And I can now use a sort mechanism. So I just sort by score, and you'll see all of my 95s, then 45s, then 25s below. So this gives me some additional prioritization capability to sort these, and I can then choose which will I force in, which will I force out. Everything would be in by default unless you've modified it. And I can then drag things around in terms of priority order, given if I did have any resource constraints applied inside this model. So again, a range of prioritization and optimization, frankly, capabilities built into this interface. You'll also see, and there could be some changes in the color coding before this actually ships, but there are algorithms running behind the scenes to say, okay, in this case, you do have a constraint, which would be your resource load here. I'm going to color code for you which of these can be done and which can't. So if you've seen this elsewhere, maybe called a water line above or below, stuff like that, it's the same concept. What can get in or what can't get in based off of that supply line. So working underneath the constraints of our resources, what can we do, what can't we do? And this can, again, be leveraged against live system data or against your what-if analysis. Whoops, click away. Okay. Now here's one example. This is really cool. I'm still trying to figure out the screens to how to do it live so that you can see everything because there's a lot moving around. But in the event that you had this connected to a what-if model with the real-time integration, when you find a scenario like this, and obviously I put something together here that's a little crazy, that's fine. 2020 after all, even though this is scheduled for 2019. Project is called Go to Mars. Well, this is really valuable to me. I can't do it here because the others take a higher priority. And very clearly, this is one of the major issues. It's above our supply line. When can this happen? I want to visually see. Well, it looks like there's some capacity here. Now, on the what-if side, we have lots of other tools as well to help understand the effects and where we might have that ability. When this is connected live to a what-if analysis, I rarely do animation. Let's see if it works. There we go. So now I'm showing side by side. When I find and take that project, so here's move to Mars, go to Mars, excuse me, and you'll see the prior position, and I shift it out, in this case out to early August, which appeared to be the point in time when I could do this. You'll notice that immediately, and of course I have screen captures, so you'll have to just believe me, this would immediately show this shifting to now sit here. So I now see my go to Mars, my color codes have been retained. I now appear to fit well under or very closely at my supply line. And again, all using a concurrent relationship between a what if model and a portfolio planner report. All right, so a really, really cool feature set here that can really help convey maybe additional capabilities beyond what you might not have in a what if model when trying to convey this to executive management or others trying to make decisions at this higher level. Okay, so that's all part of Portfolio Planner. Again, a really big feature set, a really big add. There's much, much more coming. And of course, we will do some additional breakout sessions, not today, but after the release, walking through this capability in greater detail. All right. We still have lots more to cover. So hopefully everyone's hanging in and has a nice cup of coffee in front of them. Not too much, though. I think I'll still end by the top of the hour. So timesheets, a few updates here. This one's a little bit older in the backlog, but it did get completed. Some customers have asked us, is there a way to prevent certain projects from appearing in timesheets for whatever reason? Maybe it can't be billed. We don't want to track time against it. People could accidentally book time when they shouldn't. A variety of reasons. Well, in any case, from your timesheet configuration, you can now exclude certain projects from appearing in a timesheet, regardless of if anyone's assigned or not. So even if you have people assigned to it, it should flow through. This intercepts that process, blocks it from appearing in the timesheet, and your users would never know. Okay, so we can prevent projects from appearing in the timesheet. This one, I don't have a screen capture yet. It's still wrapping up. But in the past, we did offer an ability, we continue to enforce time entry at the project level only. So a client might say, I don't want you to book time at the task level. It's a waste of effort. I want to keep it really simple, blah, 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 whatever reason. Well, with 5.2, we've now added additional options. You're not seeing them here. They will be there. One of them is to continue to enforce time entry at the project level, but now we've added the opposite. We can now enforce time entry at the task level, where a user can only book time at the task level from their timesheet. And of course, we'd offer the third option, which is you can use whichever one you want. We don't care. All right, so you have three options underneath enforcing time entry. Project level, which already exists, task level, which is new, and then you choose whatever you want, which is sort of the inferred option if you're leaving the other two disabled. Sheets. So this is taken off in popularity. There's lots of stuff planned here. Some complex, some simple, but I do want to include a few of them because I thought they were really high priority, especially for me. I use this feature quite a bit internally. Copy and paste formatting. So before we would certainly do copy and paste, but it would leave off certain formatting, certain calculations. It didn't work for entire rows or entire columns. So with 5.2, we've greatly improved the copy and paste capability for formatting and for calculation details. You can apply this to single cells. You see on the left, I've copied the risk rating high from probably row 6 through 7, 8, 9. And the screen capture on the right, you can copy and paste entire rows as well. All right, so now copy and paste has been massively improved inside of the Sheets functionality. We've also introduced a delete icon, so it's easier to find this, more clear to execute. We've also implemented a number of performance improvements for deletion, and this works with both single row deletion as well as multi-row deletion. Okay, so improvements there. This one always bugged me. We've got it solved. Persisting your column widths. So when you'd open a sheet, everything would kind of be scrunched together. And you started manipulating and expanding the various column widths. You got it the way you like it. You hit save, boom, everything comes back to the way it was. Again, starting in 5.2, just a minor update, but I want to make people aware of it. Maybe I rank it more highly than you do, but this now gives you an option, or not an option, it will automatically persist that column width upon save. So when I return, I get the same width, in this case for risk cost. I don't have to tinker with my column width thereafter. Right? So those are some updates on Sheets. Okay, so we're coming into the home stretch. I hope this wasn't too fast. 3 remaining sections I want to talk about. Excel import, so we have a minor update there. We have some really important and valuable updates on the API. And then one other technical sort of golden egg here that I want to share is a product that we've been working on for a while. And just to give you a heads up, it's not necessarily ready yet for clients, but I want to let you know that it is underway. And it's something we call ORCHESTRATOR. So you might have heard this a few times on calls with support, with customer success. Maybe I mentioned it, or Greg, or someone else. Just give you some insight of what we're really talking about. Okay, so number one, in 5.2, admin time. So we were continually adding more features around admin time. There were a few ways to get this imported previously, but you really had to work with us directly. Starting in 5.2, you now have a new tab inside of Excel import with a new template that allows you to import your admin time by resource over time, according to whatever time phase you wish. Of course, the admin category must exist. The resource must have a time frame that overlaps as well. So there are some audit items there, but this does enable bulk import of your time phased admin time by resource using an Excel template. Okay. Now, before I go into, well, let me skip forward real quick. Let me do the API first, then we'll wrap up with those two sort of technical eggs. API enhancements. Number one, we've added endpoints here to allow you to update admin time via the API, so we can now programmatically interact with admin time. The admin time categories have to be there, but the actual ability to write those values by resource now available via the API. We've also updated how we can write to allocation and demand data sets, planned and actual, to allow you to insert these data by quarter, by month, or by week. For those of you that have written connections to Tempus, you're aware that in the past it had to be a by-day array. Then we improved it to say, well, it has to be a by-day array, but it can target just a specific time frame. That was a huge step up. Now, we do all of that, but now you can say, well, I want to update just 1 month, just 1 week. You'll be able to do that with 5.2 and specifically inject the month value, week value, whatever, versus, again, having to break out an array by day. The same goes, you can just copy what I said a moment ago in your memory for capacity. So if I'm updating resource capacity, I can do it again by quarter, by month, or by week. And then lastly, in the API, we introduced an option to call the project lock and project unlock functionality. That's something we released, I'm going to say almost a year ago, but now we've introduced the ability to do it programmatically. So if you had some external system, I don't know what it is, let's say, I don't know, Salesforce.com or somewhere in PeopleSoft or whatever, or Workday, where you take a project and it goes into sort of like a financial close, and you want to now lock that project in Tempus, you can now make that call back to Tempus programmatically and lock that project to prevent any edits, changes, timesheet submissions, whatever it may be. So locking and unlocking available programmatically. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, whoops, let me go back, I forgot. Two things just to mention real quickly. And this is really important for future capabilities. This is not to discuss 5.3. I didn't think we'd have time, and I'm glad I didn't include it. But of course, the 5.3 plans are huge, as you can expect. A few technical bonuses for 5.2. Number one, we've introduced a plugin logic, plugin capability to make deploying custom interfaces, custom screens much easier. So those of you that might be looking to build something inside of Tempus, where you literally have your own custom interface, those are things that are being worked on. So you'll at some point have that ability on your own. Right now, you have to work with us to do that, but that is something that's been introduced. And then lastly, I just want to quickly touch on this orchestrator, which you might be hearing about quite a bit. Now, the orchestrator itself is a separate product. It's not on the web at the moment. It's essentially a desktop development tool that lets you do a few things with Tempus. It's designed to help with integrations. It's designed to help with automation. It's designed to essentially help through workflow, through email alerting, all the types of stuff you might want to activate or perform from within Tempus. Like, I change a custom field to this level, and now I want a bunch of stuff to happen inside the application. Or I make a change to something, a resource or a project, and I want to send out alerts. All of that is now done using our orchestrator platform, which eventually we plan to put in your hands. When that'll happen, I don't know, but I wanted you to at least be aware. And what I have here are a few screen captures from the orchestrator. So those of you that have worked with drag and drop workflow style designers will understand what I'm showing here. And essentially, the orchestrator is just that. It's a development environment that lets you drag and drop different actions onto a design surface, configure the timing of those connections, build out the variables and other settings that go into each of the actions, and then deploy it. All right, now these utilize all of the API capabilities of Tempus, webhooks, and so on. And you'll see off on the left, I've got a handful, not all, of the actions that are included. You'll see a range of control flow actions, state machine workflows, flow charts, parallel actions, if statements, for each looping. You'll see different connections to other systems, a range of ServiceNow connectors, SharePoint connectors, SQL connectors, Claire's, and lots of other tools that our clients might have connections or need connections to. These are, again, just basics. You'll see regex operations and so on. And then a range of Tempus actions, create project, clone project, create resource, and so on. So this lets us drag and drop, and these are examples of what this orchestrator looks like, tying together a various set of actions. We're, in this case, retrieving a project, updating the project's value, the same here, looping through various projects, updating that information, or maybe sending emails. So I just want to give you a heads up, this orchestrator product is totally separate from Tempus, and again, designed for drag and drop automation of Tempus actions, integrations, and workflow. So it's its own unique set of tooling, and there's more and more and more stuff to come on this. Okay, so thank you again for joining us, participating. I hope this was useful. I know I went pretty quickly. We will be doing more sessions on 5.2. Keep an eye out from our customer success team. You'll be hearing from Samantha and team on when we'll be doing those, coming up very soon, and the release dates. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, to Greg, anyone in the team. But that's it for me. Greg, back to you.